The grinding sound came first. Metal on metal, the kind that makes mechanics wince, and veterans reach for weapons they no longer carry. Marcus Stone Wolf, to anyone who mattered, heard it through the plate glass window of Mama D's diner, his coffee going cold against calloused palms. 58 years of living had taught him to trust his gut, and every instinct screamed that something outside in the October rain was very, very wrong. He'd been a Marine once. Corporal 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, Desert Storm in '91, then Fallujah in '04, when they called him back for a second tour he hadn't wanted. The scar running down his neck, white against weathered skin, still ached when storms rolled in off the Columbia River. His left hand was missing its ring finger, taken by shrapnel that should have killed him, but settled for making every handshake a reminder that he'd outlived better men. The gray beard he'd braided into 2 thick ropes hung to his chest, and the leather vest he wore, cuts they called them, in the club bore patches that told a story 30 years in the making. Hell's Angels Portland Chapter, Sergeant at Arms, a title that meant he kept order, enforced rules, and protected his brothers when the world came calling. Outside, 5 Harley-Davidson Road Kings sat in the rain, chrome gleaming under the gray His brother's bikes, Jackson Rivers had the 2019 model Midnight Black with custom exhaust. Tommy Smoke Chen rode a 21 with ape hanger bars. Jake Wrench Morrison, oldest of them at 52, kept his 1998 running like it rolled off the line yesterday. Dutch Keller's 2020 had saddlebags big enough to carry a week's worth of camping gear. Each bike worth $15,000 minimum. Each bike representing years of savings from men who worked construction, drove trucks, fixed engines for a living. Each bike now sitting target for whoever was making that sound. Wolf stood, his 6'2" frame unfolding from the booth. 240 pounds of muscle gone leaner with age, but no less dangerous. The red bandana tied around his left bicep caught the diner's fluorescent light. Lucy's bandana, his daughter's. Dead 15 years now, and the wound still fresh enough to bleed. He moved toward the door, hand instinctively checking the Glock 19 holstered at his waist beneath the leather vest. Portland was an open carry state, but concealed meant fewer questions from citizens who saw bikers and assumed the worst. Not that he blamed them. Some chapters earned the reputation. His chapter just tried to survive it. Across the parking lot, Sarah Hayes didn't hear the grinding. She heard her son's voice instead, small and persistent, from the backseat of her aging Subaru. "Can I get a snack?" Her eyes found him in the rearview mirror. Ethan, 7 years old, pressing his nose against the window, with the kind of focus his kindergarten teacher called exceptional and his first-grade teacher called exhausting. Observant, they both agreed. The kid noticed everything, remembered more, asked questions that didn't have easy answers. "We need to save money, sweetie." The words tasted like failure. 32 years old, and she looked 40, the kind of exhaustion that settled into bones and refused to leave. 2 years of nursing school, then 5 years working as a nurse's aide at Providence Hospital because the degree cost too much and life cost more. Her husband, Michael, had been 34 when the construction scaffolding collapsed, taking him and 2 other men down 8 stories. The company fought the wrongful death suit, won on a technicality, left her with $60,000 in medical debt, and a son who asked why daddy wasn't coming home. That was 3 years ago. The debt had grown to $72,000 with interest. Her checking account held $23. The gas light glowed accusatory on the dashboard. Miller's gas station sat ahead, southeast Portland, the kind of place where working people stopped on their way to lives that ground them down one shift at a time. Ethan didn't complain about the snack. He never did. 7 years old and already understanding that no meant "we can't afford it," which broke her heart more than his crying ever could. He wore shoes 2 sizes too small because new ones cost $40 she didn't have. His jacket came from Goodwill Gap, brand from 2020, still good but fraying at the cuffs. The crackers, waiting at home, would be dinner, same as yesterday. She pulled up to pump, 3 hands shaking from exhaustion she couldn't afford to acknowledge. 38 hours since she'd slept. Double shift Friday night into Saturday morning, then home for 4 hours with Ethan before her neighbor misses. Chen had to leave for her own job. No family within 1,000 miles. Michael's parents blamed her for the debt stop calling 2 years back. Her own mother lived in Phoenix with a new husband who made clear that Sarah's problems weren't his concern. The rain picked up as she stepped out, cold October wind cutting through her scrubs. She'd work the cancer ward tonight. 3 patients died on her watch. Not her fault she was an aide, not an RN couldn't make the calls that mattered, but she'd held their hands anyway, spoke as softly, tried to make the end less lonely. Then she'd clean the rooms, change the sheets, moved on to the next person whose insurance might cover another month of life if they were lucky. Stay in the car. Ethan nodded, but his attention had already shifted. 5 motorcycles at the far end of the lot, big men in leather gathering around them, Hell's Angels patches visible even through the rain. She'd grown up in Portland, knew the reputation, knew enough to keep distance. They ran drugs, people said, extortion, protection rackets, the kind of men you cross the street to avoid. But Ethan wasn't watching the bikers. His eyes tracked something else. Movement along the line of motorcycles, low and furtive. A man in a dark hoodie, maybe 30 thin build, moving with purpose that didn't match the casual Saturday morning around them. The man crouched beside the first bike, pulled something from his pocket. Metal glinted. Ethan's forehead wrinkled the way it did when he was working through a problem his teachers hadn't explained yet. Something felt wrong. The man moved to the second motorcycle, repeated the motion. Quick hands practiced movements, checking over his shoulder every few seconds. Last month, Dave had visited. Dave the mechanic, Mom's friend from the hospital, who'd fixed their Subaru's transmission for cost when the quote came back at $1,800 they didn't have. Dave told stories while he worked, and one stuck in Ethan's mind now. A customer whose brake line had been cut. Clean cut, Dave said. Professional job. The car made it 3 miles before the brakes failed on I-84. Crashed into a guardrail, doing 65. Driver lived but walked with a cane now, and Dave's voice had gone quiet when he explained how brake fluid looked when it leaked from severed lines. The man moved to the third motorcycle, then the fourth. Tool in hand, working underneath where the wheels met the frame. Ethan's heart started hammering. 7 years old, but he understood death. Understood his father hadn't come home. Understood that Mom cried sometimes late at night when she thought he was asleep. Understood that wrong things needed speaking up about because that's what Mom always said. When you see something wrong, you speak up. But these were Hell's Angels. Scary men with tattoos and leather and faces that didn't smile. Men who looked like they'd hurt you for looking at them wrong. The man finished with the fourth motorcycle, stood, tucked the tool into his hoodie, started walking away quickly toward the back of the parking lot where a silver car idled with engine running. Ethan's hand found the door handle. His mother's voice echoed in his head. Stay in the car. But his father's voice came too from before, from when Dad was still alive, and teaching him things. You see someone about to get hurt, you do something, even if you're scared. Especially if you're scared. The seatbelt clicked. The door opened. Cold rain hit his face. Marcus. Sarah's head snapped around from the gas pump, but her son was already moving. Small legs pumping across wet asphalt. His second-hand jacket flapping open because she'd bought it too big, hoping he'd grow into it. His shoelaces untied because he still couldn't master the bunny ear method Mrs. Chen tried teaching him. Ethan, get back here. But he was running toward the bikers, and Sarah dropped the gas pump nozzle, forgot the car, forgot everything except the sight of her 7-year-old son sprinting toward 5 men who could break him without trying. Wolf saw the kid coming before the others did. Training from 2 wars and 30 years on the streets made him notice movement, assess threats, calculate responses faster than conscious thought. Small boy, 7 or 8, running full tilt. No adult with him. Face pale, eyes wide. Not playing, not lost. Something else. The kid was shouting, "Don't start your bikes. Please don't start your bikes." The words hit the group like cold water. Conversation stopped. Jackson Rivers turned first hand, dropping instinctively to his waist, where a knife rode beneath his vest. 6 foot, even 190, 38 years old, with eyes that had seen too much and a scar running down his jaw from a bar fight in Tacoma 3 years back. Former Army Infantry, Iraq from 2006 to 2009. Honorably discharged, but the honor hadn't kept his wife and daughter alive when he'd driven drunk in 2015 and wrapped their Honda around a telephone pole. 3 years in prison. 3 years of knowing he'd killed the only people who mattered. Tommy Chen moved right flanking. 31 years old, lean and fast, former Marine Scout sniper with 2 tours in Afghanistan. He'd lost a brother to an IED in Helmand Province and wore the dog tags around his neck next to his own. Jake Morrison straightened from examining his bike's rear tire, 52 years old, former Army mechanic who could rebuild a Harley engine blindfolded. Dutch Keller shifted left, completing the half circle. 43 former construction foreman hands scarred from a decade of heavy labor before a fall broke his back badly enough that disability checks and the occasional under-table work were all that remained. 5 combat veterans, 5 men who'd seen children used as weapons, as shields, as suicide bombers, in markets where Americans tried to win hearts and minds. Instinct said assess the threat, but the kid wasn't armed, wasn't wearing a vest, wasn't anything except terrified and desperate and running straight at them. Wolf knelt, making himself smaller. 240 pounds, dropping to one knee, putting himself at eye level with a child who weighed maybe 52 pounds, soaking wet. The other bikers held position, watching, waiting for Wolf's call. The kid skidded to a stop 3 feet away, breathing hard words tumbling out in a rush that would have been funny if his face hadn't been so pale. There's a bad man. He's cutting something on your bikes. I saw him. He had a tool and he was under them, and my mom's friend said brake lines get cut and people crash and die. Wolf's chest went cold. Brake lines. The grinding sound he'd heard. Not paranoia, not imagination. Real. Where the kid pointed with a shaking hand toward the back of the lot. A figure in a black hoodie was moving quickly, almost running, heading for a silver Honda Civic with engine running and driver waiting. Jake. Tommy. Check the bikes. His voice came out flat, controlled, the same tone he'd used in Fallujah when his fire team got ambushed, and staying calm meant staying alive. Jake moved immediately, dropping to his back and sliding beneath the first motorcycle with the ease of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Tommy went to the second. Dutch, get that guy. Dutch took off, 43 years old but fast when it mattered, boots pounding pavement as the hooded figure saw him coming and broke into a dead sprint. The Honda's tires squealed, reversing hard, and the runner grabbed the door handle, pulling himself inside. The car fishtailed out of the lot, doing 40, nearly clipping a minivan in the process. Wolf kept his attention on the kid, small, thin, wearing shoes with holes in the soles. Hands had scars on the knuckles. Old scars, the kind that came from poverty, not abuse. Fell down a lot, probably. Not enough food to keep energy up. Wolf had seen that look before in other countries in children who learned too young that the world didn't care about them. What's your name, son? Ethan. The name came out barely louder than a whisper. The kid's mother arrived then, 32, and looking 50, grabbing her son's shoulders and pulling him back against her legs. She wore scrubs. Healthcare worker. Nurse probably, or aide. Her hands shook, but her grip on the boy was fierce. I'm so sorry. I told him to stay in the car. I don't know what, Mom. He was cutting their bikes. I saw him. Jake slid out from under the first motorcycle, his weathered face dark with fury. Brake line, clean cut. Professional job. He moved to the second bike, check straightened. This one too. Tommy confirmed the third, then the fourth. Jesus Christ. Wolf looked down at Ethan, really looked. 7 years old, saved 5 lives, spoke up when adults would have looked away, minded their own business, convinced themselves it wasn't their problem. You understand what you just did? Ethan shook his head, still breathing hard. If we'd started those bikes, Wolf didn't finish, didn't need to. High-speed crashes, bodies sliding across asphalt, motorcycles weighing 800 pounds flipping end over end. He'd seen it before in Iraq when insurgents sabotaged Humvees. Blood mixed with gasoline, screaming. The smell of burning rubber, and worse. You saved our lives today. He extended his hand, massive and scarred knuckles thick from decades of fighting. Ethan hesitated, then took it. The handshake lasted 3 seconds. Wolf felt the boy's pulse racing beneath thin skin. Behind them, a Portland police cruiser pulled into the lot, lights flashing. Officer Davidson emerged, middle-aged, tired eyes, someone who'd seen everything twice and believed nothing anymore. Wolf knew him. They had history. Not good history, but not bad either. Complicated history, like most things involving bikers and cops in a city that couldn't decide if Hell's Angels were criminals or community fixtures. Bear, Wolf stood, releasing Ethan's hand. Davidson, we've got attempted murder here. Someone cut brake lines on 4 bikes. Davidson's expression shifted from bored to alert. Who the kid witnessed it? Ethan Hayes, 7 years old. Better observance skills than half my department. Ethan gave his statement. Height 5'10", weight 160, black Nike hoodie with white logo. jeans dark, tool that looked like wire cutter's small professional grade. Worked on 4 bikes approximately 8 minutes total, left in a silver Honda Civic heading east on Southeast Division Street. Tommy returned phone out, got the plates before he got too far. TRJ 847, Oregon tags. Davidson radioed it in, then looked at Wolf. You thinking what I'm thinking, professional hit. Someone wants us dead. Davidson's radio crackled. He stepped away for 30 seconds, came back with his face carefully neutral. Car was reported stolen yesterday. Fake IDs used to rent it from Enterprise. This wasn't random. Sarah's stomach went ice cold. Her hand found Ethan's head, pulled him closer. Are we in danger? Wolf exchanged glances with Jackson, who'd been watching the exchange with the kind of focus that missed nothing. Possibly. Person who did this saw this area. Might not have registered you specifically, but if he's thorough, if he thinks back, remembers details. He trailed off. Didn't need to spell it out. Witnesses didn't live long when organized crime was involved. Detective Maria Santos arrived 12 minutes later, 40 years old, sharp-eyed Latina heritage showing in features that advertised competence rather than sympathy. She'd worked organized crime for 15 years, knew Portland's underworld better than most criminals did, and didn't suffer fools regardless of badge status. She took Ethan's statement again, asked detailed questions, nodded approvingly when he described the tool's grip texture and the way the man's hands moved with practiced efficiency. You pay attention in school, yes, ma'am. Good. Keep doing that. World needs people who see what's actually there instead of what they want to see. She turned to Wolf. This is escalation. 4 bikes. That's not warning. That's attempted mass casualty. We have enemies. Comes with the territory. Anyone specific making noise lately? Wolf hesitated. 20 years in the club taught him that talking to cops, even ones he semi-trusted, was complicated. But Sarah and Ethan stood 3 feet away, and they'd gotten involved because of him, because the kid had a conscience his own brothers might have ignored. North Side Syndicate. We had words last year. Bar fight 5 hospitalized. No charges filed because witnesses got scared. Santos wrote it down. Carlton Carson's crew, Iron Mike himself. She nodded slowly. I'll look into it. Meantime, you might want to consider that you've got a witness here who can identify the perpetrator. And organizations that cut brake lines tend not to appreciate witnesses. The implication hung heavy. Sarah's grip on Ethan tightened until the boy squirmed. We should go. Her voice came out small, and Wolf felt something crack inside his chest. Lucy's voice had sounded like that once when she was 7, and the doctor explained that leukemia meant fighting something inside her own body, and they'd need money for treatments insurance wouldn't cover. Ma'am, Sarah looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time. Hers were brown, exhausted, carrying the kind of weight that broke people who weren't strong enough. Your son just saved 5 lives. In our world, that creates a debt. We take care of our own. I'm not yours. We're nobody. You became ours the second your boy spoke up. Jackson stepped forward, his voice quieter, but no less intense. My daughter was 5 when she died. Car accident. I was driving drunk. Killed her and my wife both. Did 3 years for vehicular manslaughter. Came out and found these men waiting. They gave me purpose when I had none. Gave me family when I destroyed mine. He looked at Ethan. Your boy showed courage most grown men don't have. People who cut brake lines don't like loose ends. You understand what I'm saying? Siesha understood. She'd worked healthcare long enough to know that witnesses in organized crime cases often disappeared. That children were leverage. That being nobody meant nothing when someone wanted you dead. There's a diner 2 blocks over. Mama D's. Best burgers in Portland. Let us buy you lunch while we wait for forensics. Least we can do. Ethan tugged his mother's scrub top. Can we, Mom? Please. Sarah looked at her son at the 5 bikers surrounding them, at the police cars now filling the lot as more units responded. She was so tired. Tired of fighting alone. Tired of pretending she had everything under control when the world proved daily that she didn't. Just while we wait. Mama D's diner occupied a corner lot that predated the neighborhood's gentrification attempts. Vinyl booths, chrome fixtures, black and white checkerboard floor that hadn't changed since 1974. Dolores Martinez Mama D, to 3 generations of customers, ran the place with the iron will of someone who'd survived 65 years by refusing to accept defeat as a permanent condition. She looked up when the door chimed, saw Wolf and his brothers, saw the woman in scrubs and the small boy between them. Her eyes darkened knowing, took in the whole situation in 3 seconds. The usual boys. Whatever the lady and her son want. On us. Sarah opened her mouth to protest, but Mama D was already moving, gesturing them toward a booth. 2 burgers, fries, milkshakes for both. Growing boy needs food, and you look like you haven't eaten properly in a month. The words were matter of fact, not judgmental. Sarah felt tears threaten and pushed them back. She ordered grilled cheese for Ethan instead, soup for herself. Cheapest items on the menu. Mama D nodded, wrote nothing down, disappeared into the kitchen. Jackson sat across from them while Wolf made phone calls. Tommy stood by the door. Jake and Dutch took up positions that covered exits without making it obvious they were on guard. I need to ask you something straight. Jackson's voice pulled Sarah's attention from Ethan, who was coloring on a kid's menu with crayons Mama D had provided. Is there any reason someone would want to hurt you or your son? Ex-husband, debt collectors, anyone with a grudge? My husband died 3 years ago. Construction accident? There's no one. We're nobody. You witnessed a serious crime. That makes you somebody to the people who ordered it. What am I supposed to do? I work at Providence Hospital. I can't just disappear. Ethan has school. Jackson and Wolf exchanged glances. Wolf slid into the booth beside Jackson. The club has resources, safe houses, people who can keep watch. Until we figure out who ordered this and they're in custody, we can make sure you're protected. I can't accept charity. I'm 3 months behind on medical bills from my husband's death. $72,000. I can barely afford our apartment. It's not charity. You saved our lives. Some debts can only be paid in blood, my old man used to say. But some debts get paid in protection and showing up when it matters. The phrase hung in the air, some debts can only be paid in blood, and Sarah shivered despite the diner's warmth. Mama D returned with food. Not grilled cheese and soup. 2 full burger platters, thick patties with melted cheddar fries cooked in oil that smelled like comfort milkshakes in metal cups that sweated condensation. Ethan's eyes went wide. Sarah started to protest, but Mama D fixed her with a look that allowed no argument. Mija, pride won't protect your boy, but these men will. Let them. Sarah's resistance crumbled. When Mama D walked away, Sarah found herself crying silently into hands that smelled like hospital antiseptic and failure. Ethan noticed small hand finding hers under the table, squeezing with surprising strength. It's okay, Mom. We're okay. Wolf's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, his expression darkening. When he hung up, looked at Jackson. Santos got an ID on the suspect from traffic camera footage near the lot. Derek Kane, enforcer for Northside Syndicate. Former Marine, dishonorable discharge for assaulting a superior officer. Been Carlton Carson's muscle for 6 years now. So it's confirmed this was Iron Mike sending a message. Or someone paying Iron Mike to send it. Santos is investigating, but she mentioned something else. Wolf's eyes shifted to Sarah. Someone in Portland PD is on Northside's payroll, feeding them information, witness protection locations, safe house addresses, everything. The words landed like physical blows. Sarah's burger sat untouched. So nowhere is safe is relative. But public is safer than hidden right now. Anonymous witnesses disappear. Public witnesses, ones the media knows about, ones who go on record, are harder to touch without major heat. Santos wants me to go on TV. Not yet. First we get you somewhere secure. Then we figure out next steps. The safe house sat in Northeast Portland, a neighborhood that had gentrified slowly enough that working-class families still outnumbered craft breweries. 2-bedroom bungalow, white paint, peeling fenced yard with grass, gone to seed. Looked like 10,000 other houses in Portland, which was exactly the point. Dutch took first watch, parking his bike down the block. Wolf showed Sarah and Ethan inside. Furnished simply couch TV table beds with clean sheets. The backyard held a rusty swing set someone had abandoned years ago. Ethan discovered it immediately, pushing out the back door before Sarah could stop him. Can we stay here forever? Just for a little while, baby. But watching her son explore the yard, seeing him smile for the first time since when, weeks, months, Sarah felt something inside her chest loosen slightly. Club owns it. Use it for members who need a place to lay low. It's yours as long as you need it. Wolf's voice came from behind her, gentle in a way that didn't match his appearance. Why are you doing this? Because 15 years ago, my daughter Lucy died. 7 years old. Leukemia. Treatment cost more than I could borrow and I tried. Sold everything. Went into debt to people I shouldn't have. Wasn't enough. She died on her 8th birthday. He touched the red bandana on his arm. This was hers. Red was her favorite color. She wore it every day. Sarah turned, saw the pain in his eyes. Raw pain, the kind that didn't heal because it wasn't meant to. I wear it so she's still with me. And when your boy ran up to us today, 7 years old and braver than grown men, I saw her. Saw what she would have done. Lucy would have spoken up too. She was brave like that. I'm sorry for your loss. The past doesn't die. It waits. Sometimes it comes back wearing a different face. Your boy gave me a chance to protect someone when I couldn't protect her. Don't take that from me. That night, Sarah lay in an unfamiliar bed while Ethan slept beside her, exhausted from the day's terror and excitement. Her phone sat on the nightstand fully charged for the first time in weeks because the safe house had unlimited electricity. She didn't have to ration. At 11:43, it buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. We know what the boy saw. Smart kids don't live long. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Screenshot, sent to Jackson's number. Wolf's number, Santos's number. Responses came within seconds. Jackson, don't move. Lock the bedroom door. I'm on my way. Wolf, stay put. Dutch is outside. We're coming. Santos, document everything. I'm tracing the number now. She locked the door, pulled Ethan closer. He stirred, mumbled something about dinosaurs settled. Outside, motorcycle engines roared to life. Not just one, multiple. Within 15 minutes, she heard voices. Footsteps on the porch. Jackson's voice, low and controlled. Sarah, it's us. You can open the door. 6 Hells Angels filled the small living room. Wolf, Jackson, Tommy, Jake, Dutch, and a 7th man she didn't recognize. Late 50s, gray ponytail face like carved granite. This is Bear, club president. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Someone tried approaching the house from the back alley. Dutch intercepted him. Young kid, maybe 20, hired for surveillance. We convinced him to share who sent him. Convinced. Sarah didn't ask what that meant. Tyler Vance. Enforcer for Northside, works directly under Derek Kane. They know there was a witness. They want to eliminate the problem before it becomes a bigger problem. What do? You let us handle it. But we need to go public. Make you visible. Right now, you're a secret. Secrets are easy to disappear. Public witnesses are harder to touch without massive law enforcement response. Santos arrived 20 minutes later, took statements, documented the text message, explained that they'd found the kid Dutch intercepted and he was currently in custody, providing detailed information about Northside's structure in exchange for reduced charges. But I need to tell you something else. Off the record, everyone leaned in. We have a suspect for the dirty cop protecting Northside. Captain Vincent Russo, head of major crimes, 28 years on the force, decorated officer. Bear's expression didn't change. What makes him dirty? Gambling debts. 2.3 million to Yakuza. They gave him 60 days to pay. That deadline is tomorrow. The information settled over the room like poison gas. A captain had access to everything. Witness protection locations, safe house addresses, investigation details, evidence. So this house is compromised. Possibly, which is why I'm moving you tomorrow. New location, completely off books. Only 3 people will know where you are, me, Wolf, and Jackson. Sarah looked at Ethan, still asleep in the bedroom despite the commotion. 7 years old, should be worried about 2nd grade math and playground politics. Instead, he was a target for organized crime and corrupt cops. I'll do the interview, whatever you need. Just keep my son safe. The words came out stronger than she felt. Wolf caught her eye, nodded once. Jackson's scarred face showed something like respect. Santos stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start fighting back. After everyone left except Jackson, who insisted on staying for watch, Sarah stood at the bedroom door looking at her sleeping son. He'd started humming in his sleep recently. The same song over and over. Unchained Melody, Michael's favorite. He'd sing it in the shower in the car while cooking dinner. Ethan had been 4 when his father died, but the song remained. That your husband's song? Jackson's voice came from behind her, quiet. Yeah, Michael loved old music. The Righteous Brothers, Otis Redding, Pam Cook. Ethan doesn't remember much about his dad, but he remembers that song. Hold on to that. Memories keep people alive when nothing else can. Jackson settled onto the couch, gun visible in a shoulder holster he'd kept concealed until now. Sarah started to retreat, then paused. Your daughter, Emma, what was she like? Jackson's face went carefully blank, but his voice stayed level. Smart, too smart. At 5, she could read chapter books. Loved dinosaurs, wanted to be a paleontologist. Had her mother's laugh. I'd give anything to hear it again. I'm sorry, don't be. I made my choices. I live with consequences. Your boy, though, he made a brave choice today. Didn't think about consequences. Just saw wrong and spoke up. That's rare. Don't let the world beat that out of him. I'll try. She retreated to the bedroom, closed the door, climbed back into bed beside Ethan. His small body radiated warmth against hers. Outside, Portland settled into late-night quiet. Rain started again, soft against the roof. Jackson's presence in the living room should have felt intrusive. Instead, it felt like safety for the first time in 3 years. Her phone buzzed one more time. Santos. Derek Kane's vehicle just appeared on traffic cameras, heading toward northeast Portland, advising relocation immediately. Sarah's breath stopped. She texted back with shaking hands. How long? Maybe 20 minutes. I've got units responding. But get ready to move. She woke. Ethan tried to stay calm, failed completely. Baby, we need to get dressed. We're going somewhere else. Why? Because the bad people know where we are. Ethan's eyes went wide, but he didn't cry. Didn't argue. Just nodded and started pulling on his shoes. Jackson appeared in the doorway. Santos called. We're moving now. Wolf's bringing the van. 30 seconds and we're gone. They grabbed essentials, jackets, phones, nothing else mattered. Jackson carried Ethan. Sarah followed. Outside, Wolf's black van idled with headlights off. They piled in, and the van pulled away just as headlights appeared 2 blocks down, moving slowly, searching. Derek Kane's silver Honda Civic crawled past the safe house. Found nothing, kept going. Inside the van, Sarah held Ethan so tightly he protested. She didn't loosen her grip. Couldn't. Because the world had just proven again that nowhere was safe, that trying to do right got you hunted, that being nobody didn't matter when someone decided you were somebody they wanted dead. Brotherhood means nobody gets left behind. Wolf's voice carried from the driver's seat, speaking to someone on phone. She couldn't hear the response, but Wolf's next words made her stomach clench. I don't care what it costs. We protect them. That's not negotiable. They're family now, family. She lost hers 3 years ago. Michael's death had taken more than just his life. It had taken the extended network of relatives who decided grief was too expensive to afford. Now 5 bikers she'd known less than 12 hours were claiming her and Ethan as theirs. Jackson's scarred hand found hers in the darkness. We've got you. I promise. Sarah wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that promises meant something, that protection was possible, that speaking up against wrong didn't just get you killed. Wanted to believe that somewhere in Portland, in America, in the world, good people still showed up when it mattered. Ethan had fallen asleep against her chest, humming Unchained melody so softly she felt it more than heard it. 7 years old and already learning that courage cost more than most people could pay. The van drove through rain and darkness toward another safe house, another temporary shelter, another place that would be compromised eventually because corrupt cops had access to everything and organized crime had money to buy what they couldn't intimidate. But for now, this moment, they were moving. They were together. They were alive. Some debts can only be paid in blood, Wolf had said. Sarah was starting to understand what that meant. The second safe house occupied a street that Google Maps forgot existed. Southeast 82nd Avenue, wedged between an auto body shop that hadn't opened since 2019 and a Vietnamese restaurant whose foe kept 3 generations of immigrant families fed on wages Portland's tech boom never touched. The bungalow's gray paint had surrendered to Pacific Northwest rain years ago, but the bars on the windows were new, installed by club members who understood that security mattered more than curb appeal. Wolf killed the van's engine at 4:17 in the morning. Sunday now, technically, though, the darkness felt endless. Ethan hadn't woken during the transfer, dead weight against Sarah's chest. She'd counted his heartbeats for the last 40 minutes, needing the rhythm to prove he was alive, safe still hers. Jackson emerged first, scanning the empty street with movements honed by 2 wars and 3 years in prison, where looking the wrong direction at the wrong time meant bleeding. He nodded once. Wolf opened the van's side door, and cold October air flooded in, carrying the smell of motor oil from the body shop and fish sauce from the restaurant. Inside the bungalow held furniture that matched its exterior, functional, worn, honest about its limitations. A couch with springs that creaked, a kitchen table scarred by cigarette burns, two bedrooms barely large enough for the beds they contained, but the refrigerator hummed stocked with food someone had delivered while they were in transit. Milk, eggs, bread, sandwich, meat. Basics, necessities, the kind of provisions that said, "We're not abandoning you." Wolf carried Ethan to the smaller bedroom, laid him on sheets that smelled like detergent and something else Sarah couldn't identify until she realized cinnamon. Someone had tucked dryer sheets scented with cinnamon between the blankets, a small kindness in a night that held none. "Get some sleep. Dutch is outside. Tommy's relieving him at 8. You're covered." Jackson's voice came from the hallway low enough not to wake Ethan. Sarah turned, found him filling the doorway backlit by the living room's single lamp. The scar on his jaw caught shadow made him look older than 38. "How long can we do this, moving every time they get close? As long as it takes." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have." Sarah wanted to scream, wanted to demand guarantees, timelines, certainty, wanted someone to promise that tomorrow would be better, that next week they'd be safe, that this nightmare had an ending she could survive. But Jackson's eyes held no promises, just steady presence, just showing up. She retreated to the bedroom, climbed into bed beside her son. His breathing stayed even undisturbed. 7 years old and already learning to sleep through terror. She touched his hair, dark like Michael's, and felt the familiar ache of missing someone who'd never answer again. Outside, a motorcycle engine coughed to life. Dutch leaving, Tommy arriving, the changing of the guard. Brotherhood means nobody gets left behind, Wolf had said. She was starting to understand that meant something different than she'd thought. Not rescue, not salvation, just presence. Just refusing to let you face darkness alone. Her phone buzzed. "Santos, Derek Kane's vehicle located, abandoned near the first safe house. He knows we moved you, pulled back to regroup. You have maybe 12 hours before they locate the new address. I'm working on something bigger. Trust me." Sarah didn't respond, couldn't. Trust felt like a currency she'd spent completely 3 years ago, when Michael's company refused to pay death benefits, when the lawyer she'd hired took her retainer, and disappeared when her in-laws stopped answering calls because grief was easier to avoid than share. She closed her eyes, found no rest. Just darkness that held Derek Kane's silver Honda, Captain Russo's corrupt authority, the Yakuza's deadline, and her son's steady breathing, the only sound that mattered anymore. Morning came late, filtered through blackout curtains someone had installed to make the bungalow's occupants invisible to daylight surveillance. Sarah woke to voices in the kitchen, low and male, punctuated by Ethan's higher register, asking questions adults struggled to answer. "Why do you have a beard like that?" Wolf's response carried the patient tone of someone accustomed to children's directness. "Started growing it in the Marines. Found out it kept my face warm in winter. Kept growing it because it reminded me of my old man. He had a beard down to here. Can I grow a beard? In about 15 years, maybe." Ethan's laugh, genuine, unforced, made Sarah's chest tighten. She couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed like that. Months, maybe, before the medical bills started coming in, collections notices, before she'd started working doubles, before poverty became their permanent address. She found them at the kitchen table. Wolf had his colors off, just a black t-shirt that showed arms covered in ink Sarah hadn't noticed yesterday. Military insignias, dates that probably marked deployments or losses, and low on his left forearm, a small script that read Lucy Rose Stone, 2001-2009. His daughter's name. Her dates. Permanent reminder carved into skin. Ethan was eating cereal Frosted Flakes, the expensive kind Sarah couldn't afford, while Wolf drank coffee that smelled like it came from beans ground fresh instead of prepackaged in cans. Dutch sat by the window eating toast, watching the street. Tommy had gone off shift but hadn't left, sprawled on the couch with eyes closed, but posture suggesting full awareness. "Your boy's got questions. I like questions." Wolf's voice held approval, the kind Sarah heard from Ethan's teachers during parent conferences. Exceptional, they said. Observant. Asks things other kids don't think about. What kind of questions? The important kind. why people hurt each other, whether being scared means you're weak, how you know when you're doing the right thing. Those are adult questions. He's been living an adult life. Kids who grow up fast ask adult questions. Sarah poured coffee, added milk she didn't have to ration, and sat. Ethan looked up cheerful. Wolf has a daughter, had daughter, past tense, like dad. The words landed with casual brutality. Children didn't intend. Wolf's expression flickered, pain acknowledgement, acceptance, then settled. Lucy. She'd be 22 now if she'd lived. Probably in college. Maybe studying dinosaurs or marine biology. She loved ocean documentaries. What happened? Ethan's question came out soft, genuinely curious rather than morbid. She got sick. Leukemia. It's a cancer that attacks your blood. Treatment costs money we didn't have. I tried everything, sold my truck, borrowed from friends, took loans I shouldn't have. Still wasn't enough. She died 3 days after her 8th birthday. Did it hurt? The doctors gave her medicine so it didn't hurt as much as it could have. But yeah, it hurt. Dying hurts. Watching someone you love die hurts worse. I watched Dad die. The statement hung in morning light that felt too bright for the weight it carried. Sarah's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. The scaffolding fell and he looked at me. We were visiting the job site because Dad wanted to show me where he worked. He looked at me and his face did this thing. Then he fell. It took 6 minutes for the ambulance. I counted. Sarah couldn't breathe. Ethan had never told her this, never mentioned being at the site. She thought he'd been at school, heard about it after. Baby, you never said I didn't want you to feel bad. You were already so sad. 7 years old, watching his father die, keeping that secret for 3 years to protect his mother's feelings. Sarah felt something inside her crack completely. Wolf reached across the table, his massive scarred hand covering Ethan's small one. Brave doesn't mean not being scared or not hurting. Brave means doing what needs doing even when you're scared and hurting. You've been brave your whole life. That's rare. The words brave means doing what needs doing even when you're scared and hurting settled over the kitchen like a blessing Sarah hadn't known she needed. Her phone rang. Santos. Conference call. You, Wolf Jackson, put me on speaker. Sarah complied. Wolf gestured Tommy awake. Dutch moved closer. Everyone listening. We ID'd the corrupt captain, Vincent Russo, 52. Major crimes, 28 years on force. Decorated. Married 23 years, wife died of breast cancer 2016. One daughter, Isabella Russo, 19, sophomore at USC studying pre-med. What's his angle? Gambling. Started small, grew big. Lost everything in poker games at an underground club in Vancouver, Washington. Borrowed from Yakuza to cover debts. 2.3 million. They gave him 60 days. Today's day 60. Santos paused and Sarah heard papers rustling. Here's where it gets interesting. Yakuza contacted him yesterday. They have Isabella under surveillance in Los Angeles. Dorm room 304. They told Russo finish the job or they take her. Jesus Christ. Wolf's voice came out flat. Ethan looked up, sensing adult tension. So Russo's desperate. Daughter's life versus strangers' lives. Most people choose family. That's what I'm counting on. Santos's words carried weight Sarah didn't understand until the detective continued. Russo accessed safe house locations at 2:14 this morning. All of them, including the one you're at now. He gave the addresses to Derek Kane. The bungalow felt suddenly exposed. Windows that held protection 30 seconds ago now felt like targets. You're telling us this, why? Because we're going to use it. Russo thinks he's feeding Kane information. But we're going to feed Russo false information. Make him think Sarah and Ethan are somewhere else. Lead Kane into a trap. And us. You stay put. This address is secure for now because Kane is chasing the false lead. But we need to move fast. I need Sarah to do a television interview. Channel 8, Rachel Kim. We make this public, make Sarah and Ethan visible, protected by media attention. When today? 3 p.m. We can't wait. The longer you're hidden, the more vulnerable you are. Sarah's hands started shaking. Television meant exposure, meant her face on every screen in Portland, meant everyone knowing her business, the debt, the poverty, the desperation, meant Ethan's face out there too. My son doesn't go on camera. Agreed. Just you. We keep Ethan's identity protected. But you need to tell your story. the mother who witnessed a crime, the Hells Angels who protected you, the corrupt cop trying to silence you. Portland needs to know, and if it doesn't work, then at least people will remember your names when they find your bodies. The brutal honesty should have terrified Sarah. Instead, it clarified everything. Hide and die quietly, or speak and die loudly enough that someone might care. I'll do it. Wolf caught her eye, nodded once. Respect. Jackson's scarred face showed something harder to define. Pride, maybe. Or recognition that courage cost more than most people could afford. Good. I'm sending a car at 2:30. Bring nothing identifiable. We're keeping this location secure. Wolf and Jackson will accompany you. Ethan stays here with Tommy and Dutch. Sarah's immediate instinct was to refuse. Leave Ethan with relative strangers while she put herself on television. Insanity. But Wolf's hand on her shoulder, steady and sure, carried a message her exhausted brain struggled to accept. We'll protect him. That's not negotiable. After Santos disconnected, Sarah retreated to the bedroom. Found Ethan's backpack, the one he'd grabbed from their apartment before it burned. Inside his drawings, stick figures of people he loved. Michael with exaggerated beard. Sarah with her hair down the way she wore it before perpetual ponytails became necessity. And new drawings from yesterday. Wolf with beard braids, Jackson with the scar, 5 motorcycles in a row. One drawing showed a man in a hoodie, black and menacing tool in hand. Below it, Ethan's careful 7-year-old handwriting, the bad man. I stopped him. Sarah pressed the paper to her chest and cried silently into hands that smelled like borrowed soap and coffee she hadn't paid for. When she emerged 10 minutes later, face-washed, composure reconstructed, she found Wolf teaching Ethan chess. This piece is the pawn, weakest piece on the board, but it's the only piece that can become something else. Reach the end and it transforms. Becomes a queen, the most powerful piece. Sometimes the smallest, weakest thing becomes the most important. Dutch, still by the window, spoke without turning. Pawns win wars. People forget that. They see the kings and queens, the knights and rooks. But wars are won by people who show up, do the work, refuse to quit. Pawns. Every time. The word showing up is 90% of everything landed with weight that felt prophetic. At 1:43 p.m., Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, then saw Santos's follow-up text, pick up. It's secure. The voice that emerged belonged to a woman younger than Sarah, scared but controlled. Mrs. Hayes. My name is Isabella Russo. I'm Captain Russo's daughter. Detective Santos gave me your number. Sarah's breath stopped. Everyone in the room went still. I need you to know something. My father isn't a bad man. He's a desperate man. The Yakuza have people watching my dorm. They sent photos of me sleeping. They said if he doesn't deliver you and your son to them, they'll kill me. Isabella's voice cracked. I don't want to die, but I don't want you to die either. I'm calling because Detective Santos thinks maybe if you and I talk, if you go public together, if we make this about more than just one family, you want me to save your father while your father is trying to kill my son. The words came out harsher than Sarah intended. Isabella flinched audibly. I want you to survive, and I want to survive. And I think the only way both happen is if we make this so public that the Yakuza can't touch either of us without massive law enforcement response. How old are you? 19. Sophomore at USC, pre-med. I want to be an oncologist because my mom died of breast cancer when I was 13, and the doctors tried, but it wasn't enough. Wolf leaned forward, something in his expression shifting. Your mother, what was her name? Catherine Russo? She was a teacher. 3rd grade. Everyone loved her. Wolf's hand found the red bandana on his arm, touched it absently. My daughter died of leukemia, 7 years old. Lucy. If she'd lived, if there'd been enough money for treatment, maybe she'd be your age now. Maybe studying medicine. Maybe trying to save other people's kids. The silence on the line stretched 10 seconds. Then Isabella spoke, voice thick. I'm sorry for your loss. And I'm sorry my father is trying to hurt people because he's trying to save me. That's not okay. Nothing about this is okay. Sarah closed her eyes, found Michael's voice in memory. He'd have known what to say, how to navigate this. He'd been good with moral complexity, with seeing gray where Sarah only saw black and white. Tell Detective Santos I'll do the interview. But I want you there too. Both of us, together. Two daughters, one dead, one threatened. Both caught in systems that value money over lives. Isabella's exhale sounded like relief. Thank you, I'll be there. After disconnecting, Sarah looked at Wolf. Your daughter, if she'd lived. What do you think she'd say about all this? Wolf's eyes went distant, seeing something Sarah couldn't. Lucy had this thing she'd say when I complained about life being unfair. She was 6, maybe 7. She'd look at me with these serious eyes and say, Daddy, fair isn't when everyone gets what they want. Fair is when everyone gets what they need. Like she'd figured out in 6 years what took me 40 to learn. What did she need? More time. That's all any of us need. More time to become who we're supposed to be. At 2:30, an unmarked sedan pulled up. Not Santos driving. FBI agent Marcus Freeman, 45 shoulders that suggested military background, eyes that missed nothing. He emerged, scanned the street, knocked 3 times. Wolf answered, exchanged words Sarah couldn't hear. Then turned. It's time. Sarah kissed Ethan, held him longer than necessary. I'll be back in 2 hours. Dutch and Tommy won't let anything happen to you, I know. Be brave, Mom. Like Mr. Wolf said, do what needs doing even when you're scared. Words coming back at her from a 7-year-old who'd learned them that morning. Sarah nodded, unable to speak, and followed Wolf and Jackson to the sedan. The drive took 20 minutes. Freeman explained the setup. Channel 8 studio controlled environment security, vetted Detective Santos present, Isabella Russo arriving separately. Rachel Kim conducting the interview, 39 veteran journalist reputation for asking hard questions but fair ones. You'll be on air live. 5 p.m. news, that's deliberate. Maximum viewership. We want Portland watching. We want the story out before Russo or Kane can react. What if they react violently? Freeman's eyes found hers in the rearview mirror. Then they react on camera and we bury them. That's the gamble. Go public or stay hidden. Hidden hasn't worked. The studio occupied a building near Providence Park, modern glass and steel, that contrasted with the neighborhood's aging houses. Security met them at the door. Metal detectors. Background checks. They confiscated Wolf's Glock. Jackson's knife patted them down professionally, returned the weapons with tags promising retrieval after the broadcast. Isabella Russo waited in the green room. 19 years old, dark hair pulled back, wearing USC sweatshirt and jeans that probably cost more than Sarah's entire wardrobe. But her eyes held the same exhaustion, the same terror, the same desperate hope that maybe speaking truth could change reality. They sat together not speaking while makeup artists worked efficiently. Sarah refused most of it. Didn't want to look polished. Wanted to look like what she was, a mother working doubles, wearing scrubs, exhausted, scared, honest. Rachel Kim entered at 4:45, professional controlled, but her eyes softened seeing them. I know this is hard. I know you're terrified, but your story matters. Portland needs to hear it. Are you ready, Ma? Sarah's honesty made Rachel smile slightly. Good. The best interviews come from people who aren't ready. It means you're still feeling it instead of performing it. At 4:58, they went live. Studio lights hot and bright, camera lenses like judges' eyes. Rachel Kim between them poised. Good evening, Portland. Tonight we bring you an exclusive story about corruption, courage, and the cost of speaking truth. With me are Sarah Hayes, a nurse's aide and single mother, and Isabella Russo, daughter of Portland Police Captain Vincent Russo. Their stories intersect in ways that expose deep rot in systems we trust. She turned to Sarah. Mrs. Hayes, tell us what happened yesterday morning. Sarah told it. The gas station, Ethan seeing the man cut brake lines, running to warn the bikers, Hell's Angels discovering the sabotage, the text message threat, the safe houses, the constant moving, Derek Kane hunting them, Captain Russo feeding information to criminals. Rachel turned to Isabella. Miss Russo, your father is accused of corruption. What do you want people to know? Isabella's voice stayed steady despite tears. My father isn't evil, he's desperate. The Yakuza threatened to kill me if he didn't deliver Mrs. Hayes and her son to people who want them dead. He's choosing between his daughter's life and strangers' lives. I understand why he made that choice, but it's still wrong, and I'm here to say publicly I don't want anyone dying to save me. Not Mrs. Hayes, not her son, no one. The camera held on her face, capturing tears, capturing courage that cost more than most people understood. Rachel faced the camera directly. Captain Vincent Russo, if you're watching, your daughter is begging you to stop. The Yakuza's threat only works if you stay silent. Go public. Work with the FBI. Protect your daughter by exposing the people threatening her, not by murdering witnesses. The broadcast continued 15 more minutes. Questions, answers, Sarah explaining poverty, medical debt, working doubles trying to survive systems designed to crush people like her. Isabella explaining pressure fear, loving her father while acknowledging his crimes. At 5:28, Rachel concluded, "Thank you both for your courage. To our viewers, Sarah Hayes and her 7-year-old son need protection. Hell's Angels, Portland. Chapter has stepped up. If you have information about Derek Kane, about Northside Syndicate, about corruption in Portland PD, contact Detective Maria Santos or FBI Agent Marcus Freeman. Numbers on your screen now." The lights died. The camera stopped. Sarah felt like she'd been holding her breath for 30 minutes. Isabella reached over, took her hand. "We did it. We're alive. That's something." Outside, Freeman hustled them to the sedan. Wolf and Jackson flanking. Into the car. Doors locked. Engine starting. Sarah's phone exploded with notifications. Texts from numbers she didn't recognize. Supportive messages. Angry messages. Threats. More threats. One text stood out. "Captain Vincent Russo, you just killed my daughter. I hope you can live with that." Before Sarah could respond, the sedan's back window shattered. Not gunfire. A brick. Wrapped in paper. Freeman accelerated hard tires screaming. Jackson covered Sarah's head with his body. Wolf twisted, looking for the source. The brick's paper unfolded in Sarah's shaking hands. One sentence written in hasty block letters. "Public witnesses die. Public deaths." They made it back to the safe house in 14 minutes. Police escort arrived 6 minutes later. Santos emerged from her unmarked car, face grim. "Russo's gone. Left the precinct 30 minutes ago. Took his service weapon, his personal firearms, emptied his locker. He's AWOL." And Isabella Santos stopped looking at Sarah. The USC campus police found Yakuza members fleeing Isabella's dorm. They tried grabbing her. Campus security intervened. Isabella's safe in protective custody. But Russo doesn't know that. He thinks his daughter's dead, which makes him unpredictable. Desperate, dangerous. Wolf finished the thought. Santos nodded. "I'm moving you again. Different state. Federal protection. This is beyond Portland PD now." "No," Sarah's voice came out stronger than she felt. "I'm not running to another state. I'm not raising my son in hiding. We did what you asked. Went public. Made ourselves visible. Now finish this. Catch Russo. Catch Kane. End it." "Mrs. Hayes," I said no. The steel in her voice surprised everyone, including herself. But 3 years of poverty, of fighting alone, of being told no by systems designed to help something inside her, refused to bend further. Then we fortify here. Full protection. FBI, Portland PD, Hell's Angels. We make this house a fortress. Jackson spoke up, surprising everyone. Or we make Russo think Sarah's somewhere else. Bait. Lead him into a trap. Santos considered this, then nodded slowly. "It's risky. Everything's risky. Difference is whether we control the risk or let it control us." Wolf's assessment made Santos smile without humor. "All right, here's what we do." The planning took 3 hours. Leaked information about Sarah moving to a warehouse in Northwest Portland. False timestamp. Planted evidence. Make Russo think he had one shot at redemption, eliminate the witness, maybe save his daughter. Meanwhile, the real Sarah stayed at the bungalow. Protected. Waiting. At 11:17 p.m., Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She let it ring 4 times before Santos, listening on secondary line, nodded permission. "Mrs. Hayes." Captain Russo's voice sounded hollow, emptied of everything except rage and grief. "You killed Isabella. You went on television and you killed my daughter. They took her because you made this public. Because you wouldn't just disappear quietly. Captain Isabella is alive. She's safe. The Yakuza didn't." "You're lying. They sent me her finger. Her ring finger. With her USC ring still on it." Sarah's stomach lurched. Santos's face went white. They'd underestimated how far the Yakuza would go, believed campus security was enough. They'd been wrong. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. But you can join her. You and your son, tonight. That's fair, isn't it? My daughter for yours, Captain. Please, Northwest Warehouse. Pier 17. Midnight. Come alone or I start killing everyone you've involved. The bikers, the detective, everyone. The line died. Santos immediately called. Freeman called backup, started mobilizing. But Wolf's hand on Sarah's shoulder stopped her from spiraling. He won't be at the warehouse. It's a distraction. He'll come here. For Ethan. How do you know? Because that's what I'd do. Make everyone look one direction while you hit from another. Wolf was already moving, grabbing his colors, his weapons, his phone. Jackson followed. Tommy and Dutch emerged from watching Ethan, who'd somehow slept through everything. Santos made the call. Split response. Half to warehouse, half here. Russo's 52, desperate, armed. Consider him extremely dangerous. At 11:41, the power died. Every light in the bungalow, the auto shop, the Vietnamese restaurant. Block-wide outage. Deliberate. Wolf's voice cut through darkness. He's here. Darkness swallowed the bungalow completely. No streetlights, no ambient glow from neighboring buildings. Just pure October blackness, thick enough to taste. Wolf moved through it like he'd been born to shadows, hand finding Sarah's arm in the bedroom where Ethan slept. Take him to the bathroom. Interior room, no windows. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Jackson. Understand? Sarah nodded, realized he couldn't see her, whispered yes. She lifted Ethan, still sleeping, somehow exhausted past waking, and carried him down the hall. His weight felt both substantial and impossibly fragile. 7 years old, 52 pounds, everything that mattered. The bathroom tile was cold against her bare feet. She locked the door, set Ethan in the empty tub, covered him with her body. Her phone's dim glow provided the only light until she remembered light made targets and killed the screen. Outside, Wolf's voice came low and controlled. Tommy, roof access. Dutch, back door. Jackson, you're with me on front approach. Nobody fires unless fired upon. Russo's desperate, not stupid. He'll try stealth first. Santos coordinated from her sedan, 2 blocks away, running the warehouse operation simultaneously while backup raced toward the bungalow. Response time, 8 minutes, might as well be 8 hours. The first sound came at 11:46, not forced entry, not battering ram, just the quiet scrape of metal on metal, lock-picking, professional, patient, someone who'd done this before. Wolf positioned himself behind the kitchen counter, Glock drawn, breathing controlled. Jackson took the hallway intersection covering both bedrooms and bathroom. Dutch watched through the back door's peephole. Tommy on the roof had sightlines nobody else could match. The front door opened so quietly, Wolf almost missed it. Almost. But 30 years of staying alive in places where silence meant death had trained his ears to hear what shouldn't be there. The absence of sound, the held breath, the careful footstep. Captain Vincent Russo entered his own trap. He wore tactical gear, vest, helmet, the works. Carried his service weapon and what looked like a backup Sig Sauer. Moved like someone who'd done SWAT training decades ago and never forgot. 52 years old, but moving with purpose that belied the gray in his hair. Wolf waited. Russo advanced into the living room, weapon sweeping corners, checking angles. He was good, but Wolf was better. Captain. Russo spun, weapon tracking Wolf's voice. Found him behind the counter, gun-trained, center mass. Put it down. This doesn't end the way you think. Russo's laugh came out broken. You have no idea how this ends. My daughter's finger arrived in a box. They took her finger because that woman wouldn't shut up. Because she had to go on television. Because witnesses matter more than Isabella's life. Isabella's alive, Captain. Santos confirmed it. The Yakuza lied. They always lie. You're lying. I'm not. Your daughter is in federal protective custody. Safe. But you're about to throw away your last chance to see her again. Russo's weapon wavered. Just slightly. Just enough that Wolf saw the man beneath the corruption, father widower, 28 years of service, reduced to this moment. Where's the woman? But not here. Santos moved them. You're chasing ghosts. Another lie. Russo's eyes adjusted to darkness, scanned the bungalow's layout, noticed the closed bathroom door. Interior room. No windows. That's where you'd hide someone. He moved toward the hallway. Jackson stepped out, blocking his path. Don't. Russo's weapon shifted to Jackson. 2 guns, Two men, Mexican standoff in a hallway that smelled like borrowed time. Move or I shoot through you to get to her. Then shoot, but you'll die doing it. And Isabella lives with knowing her father murdered witnesses to save her. That's the legacy you want. Jackson's words, the ones about legacy, about what children carry, hit harder than threats. Russo's weapon lowered an inch. Just an inch. But enough. Then the window shattered. Not Russo's doing, someone else. Glass exploded inward, followed by a canister that clattered across hardwood floor. Smoke grenade, military grade. Within seconds, the bungalow filled with white smoke that burned eyes and lungs. Russo hadn't come alone. Or someone else had arrived. Either way, the equation changed. Wolf moved on instinct, heading for the bathroom. Jackson grabbed Russo's weapon arm, twisted hard. Russo fought back, trained, strong, desperate. They went down together, grappling in smoke that made breathing optional. Tommy's voice came over comms from the roof. 4 contacts. Rear approach, armed, not police. North side. Derek Kane had arrived. The rear door exploded inward. Not picked. Breached. Dutch returned fire, and immediately muzzle flash bright in smoke. Someone screamed. Dutch kept firing, controlled bursts, making them pay for every inch. Wolf reached the bathroom, pounded on the door. Sarah, it's me. We're leaving. Now. The lock clicked. Sarah emerged with Ethan awake now, scared but silent. Wolf handed him to Jackson, who'd subdued Russo with zip ties and left him cuffed to the kitchen radiator. Out the front. Tommy's covering from above. Move. But Kane's men had surrounded the bungalow. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions. Wolf pushed Sarah and Ethan back inside. Return fire bought seconds they didn't have. Santos's voice crackled over radio. Backup is 4 minutes out, hold position. 4 minutes, might as well be forever. Kane's voice boomed from outside, amplified by bullhorn. Send out the woman and kid. Everyone else walks. You have 30 seconds. Wolf looked at Sarah, at Ethan pressed against her side. Looked at Jackson, at Dutch, limping from a ricochet that caught his thigh. At Tommy on the roof with limited ammunition. At the surrounded bungalow filling with smoke. Looked at the red bandana on his arm. Lucy's bandana, 15 years of carrying her with him. He made his choice. Wolf walked to the front door, opened it, stepped into streetlight, provided by Kane's men. You want someone? Take me. Former Marine, Sergeant at Arms. Better trophy than a nurse and her kid. Kane emerged from behind an SUV. 35 lean, hard-faced Derek Kane in the flesh. He'd orchestrated this entire operation, brake lines, intimidation, assault, all leading here. You're not the mission, old man, but I'll take you as a bonus. He raised his weapon. Wolf stood still, hands visible, unarmed. The red bandana caught light. Then shoot. But you'll have to explain to Iron Mike why you settled for one angel when you could have had them all. Because the second I drop my brothers, rain hell on you. On cue, Tommy's rifle cracked from the roof. Not at Kane. At the SUV's front tire. It exploded. Message sent, we can hit what we aim at. Kane recalculated. 5 Hells Angels defensive position, time running out before police arrived. He could win, but casualties would be high. Counteroffer. You give me Russo, the dirty captain. We disappear. Everyone lives. Russo, still zip-tied inside, heard this. His voice carried through the open door. Do it. Give me to them. Just protect Isabella. Promise me that. Wolf turned, looked at the man who'd betrayed everything he'd sworn to uphold. Saw not corruption, but desperation. Saw himself 15 years ago, willing to sell anything to save Lucy. Saw the father beneath the uniform. No deals with criminals. You want him, you go through us. The words, no deals with criminals, carried finality. Kane's expression hardened. Then you die. What happened next occurred in the space between heartbeats. Kane's men opened fire. Wolf dove back inside as bullets chewed through doorframe and walls. Dutch returned fire from the kitchen. Tommy from the roof. Jackson shielded Sarah and Ethan with his body, pulling them into the bathroom again. But one shooter had circled wide, came through the smoke-filled bedroom window, found Sarah's hiding spot, raised his weapon. Ethan saw him first. Children see what adults miss. The prophecy paid in full. Mom, behind you. Sarah turned, too slow. The shooter's finger tightened on trigger. Wolf came through the bathroom door like a freight train, 40 years of combat training or compressed into one desperate lunge. He hit the shooter mid-shot. The bullet meant for Sarah went wide. Wolf and the shooter crashed through drywall into the bedroom, trading blows that broke bones and ended arguments. But another shooter appeared, this one at the bathroom door. This one with clear line of sight to Sarah and Ethan huddled in the tub. Wolf saw it happening, saw the weapon rising, saw Sarah's face realizing she was about to die, saw Ethan trying to make himself smaller, trying to shield his mother with a 7-year-old's body that couldn't shield anyone. Some debts can only be paid in blood. Wolf threw himself across the bathroom doorway, became the wall between shooter and targets. The first bullet hit his chest high right side, the second his stomach, the third his shoulder. He stayed standing through all three, body blocking the doorway, denying access until Jackson appeared behind the shooter and ended the threat permanently. Wolf collapsed, not slowly, not dramatically, just dropped like someone cut his strings. Sarah scrambled from the tub, nurse training overriding terror. She pressed hands against the chest wound, trying to staunch bleeding that wouldn't stop. Stay with me. Wolf, stay with me. His eyes found Ethan behind her. The boy held Wolf's red bandana, had grabbed it when Wolf fell. Lucy's bandana, passed from dead daughter to living boy. You keep that. You're the brave one now. His voice came out wet, bloody. Jackson appeared, phone to ear, screaming for medics. Dutch limped and applied pressure to the stomach wound. Tommy fired the last rounds from the roof, keeping Kane's remaining men pinned. Santos arrived with backup. Sirens, lights, the cavalry 90 seconds too late. Outside, Kane saw the response, cut his losses, fled. 4 of his men didn't make it. 2 wounded, 2 dead. Russo remained zip-tied to the radiator, weeping, repeating Isabella's name. But Wolf was dying, Sarah knew. She'd seen enough death in cancer wards to recognize it. The particular way breath came shallow, the skin going gray, the eyes focusing on something beyond the visible. Lucy. His question came out barely audible. Ethan leaned close. I can't see her, Mr. Wolf, but maybe she's there. Maybe she's waiting. Wolf's hand found Ethan's, squeezed once. The past doesn't die. It waits. And then if you're lucky, it gets redeemed. His eyes closed. The hand went slack. Sarah kept pressure on his wounds anyway, kept trying, kept begging him to stay. But Marcus Stone Wolf, to everyone who mattered, had shown up one last time, had paid the debt, had protected the ones who couldn't protect themselves. Paramedics arrived, started CPR, loaded him into ambulance. Sirens screaming away into Portland night. Jackson pulled Sarah and Ethan from the bathroom, past the carnage, past Russo being arrested by Santos, past the crime scene that had been their sanctuary. Got them into Santos's sedan. Is he going to die? Ethan's question came out small. Jackson couldn't lie to him. Probably. He took 3 bullets meant for you. That's what brothers do. In the ambulance, Wolf's heart stopped twice, restarted twice. The surgeon at Providence Hospital, the same hospital where Sarah worked, spent 4 hours extracting bullets, repairing damage, trying to convince flesh and bone to keep working past reasonable expectation. At 6:17 a.m., Patricia Chen emerged. 63 years old, seen everything twice, convinced nothing surprised her anymore. He's alive, barely. Bullet missed his heart by 2 centimeters. Collapsed lung, shattered rib, lost 3 pints of blood. But he's alive. The waiting room, filled with 30 Hells Angels who'd arrived throughout the night, erupted in restrained celebration. Men who didn't cry found their eyes wet anyway. Sarah held Ethan, and both of them held on to hope that felt fragile as paper. Russo in county lockup heard about Isabella being alive from Santos personally. Broke down completely, confessed everything. Names, dates, transactions. The Yakuza's Portland operation. Northside structure. Everything. Burned it all down because his daughter lived, and that was enough. Derek Kane died 3 days later. Police raid on a Northside safe house. Shootout. Kane chose fighting over surrender. Tommy Chen put the final bullet in him from 60 yards, scope-perfect vengeance for brake lines and terror and everything Kane represented. Carlton Iron Mike Carson went to federal prison on racketeering charges. Santos and Freeman built cases that held. 53 years without parole. Northside Syndicate collapsed within 6 months. 2 weeks after Wolf's surgery, Sarah and Ethan visited him in recovery. He looked diminished, 40 pounds lighter beard, gone for intubation, skin pale. But breathing, alive. Ethan climbed onto the hospital bed, careful of tubes and wires. You came back. Wasn't ready to go. Lucy said I had more work to do. Sarah's hand found his. Scarred, battered, but warm. Thank you. For everything. Family isn't blood, it's who shows up. You and your push showed up for us first. Rest is just returning the favor. The prophecy paid, the loop closed. They lived at the bungalow for 6 months while the club rebuilt their lives. Jackson visited daily. Dutch taught Ethan advanced chess. Tommy told stories about Afghanistan that made war sound less like glory and more like survival. And slowly, gradually, something like family formed from the wreckage. Jackson asked Sarah on a date 8 months after Wolf got shot. Took her to Mama D's. Ordered burgers. Talked for 3 hours about nothing and everything. Told her about Emma, about prison, about finding purpose in the least likely place. I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm already fixing myself. But I'd like company on the journey. Sarah looked at this man, scarred, honest, present, in ways Michael had never learned to be. Thought about Ethan, asking when Uncle Jack would visit again. Thought about showing up about the 90% that mattered most. Okay, let's try. They married 2 years later. Small ceremony at Mama D's. Wolf officiated, club presidents could do that. Ethan carried rings. 50 Hells Angels attended. Portland PD sent flowers. Santos gave a toast about courage coming in unexpected packages. 10 years after the night Wolf nearly died, Sarah Hayes Rivers managed Mama D's diner. Dolores had retired at 73, left the place to the woman who understood that food meant more than sustenance. It meant safety. It meant showing up. The sign outside read Mama D's and Wolf's Place, and nobody questioned why a biker got equal billing with a legend. Inside, the smell remained unchanged. Coffee and motor oil. The scent of home. Sarah had learned to brew it Mama D's way, strong enough to strip paint, but smooth enough to drink black. The motor oil came from Jackson's hands. He still worked on bikes, still rode with the club, still showed up every single day. Ethan Hayes entered at 4:15 on a Sunday afternoon. 17 now, 6 feet tall, lean like his father had been, smart like his mother raised him to be. College acceptance letters decorated the refrigerator at home Oregon State University of Portland, Reed College. He'd chosen Oregon, pre-med, wanted to study oncology, wanted to save children Lucy's age. The red bandana rode his wrist now. Fabric faded from washing, but present, always present. Wolf sat at his usual booth. 68 years old, gray beard, regrown to chest-length, limp, permanent from the bullet that shattered his hip. Retired from active club duties, but present every Sunday without fail. Bear had taken over as sergeant-at-arms. Wolf's role now was elder, advisor, living proof that showing up mattered more than winning. Kids heading to college. Wolf's observation came as Ethan helped behind the counter, pouring coffee for regulars who'd watched him grow from terrified 7-year-old to capable young man. Pre-med, going to save lives you and I never could. That's the point. Next generation does better than ours did. Jackson arrived with Dutch and Tommy, weekly tradition. Sunday dinner at Mama D's. 30 Hells Angels eventually filling booths and tables. Community that had started with brake lines and survival grown into something larger than any individual. Santos stopped by too. Detective no more. She'd made captain. Russo's old position. Cleaned house. Portland PD still had issues. Institutional problems didn't disappear overnight, but Santos fought them with the same intensity she'd fought Northside. How's the new job? Same corruption, different desk. But we're making progress. Arrested 2 dirty cops last month. It's something. It's everything. Wolf's correction made Santos smile. The old biker understood that revolutions happened in increments. That showing up every day, doing the work, refusing to quit, that was how systems changed. Isabella Russo arrived at 5:30, 29 now, finished medical school at UCLA, residency at OHSU, oncology like she'd planned. She'd never blamed Sarah, never blamed Ethan. Instead, she'd transformed her father's mistakes into purpose. Vincent Russo served 12 years of a 20-year sentence before dying of heart attack in prison. Isabella visited him monthly until the end. Forgiveness given freely even when not earned. She joined them at Wolf's booth. Ordered the usual burger, fries, coffee, black. looked at Ethan across the table. Ready for college, terrified. But you said fear means you're doing something important. Your father said that first. I just remembered it. The words fear means you're doing something important came from a dead man who lived on in quotations and memories, and the son who'd inherited his courage. Table 9 remained reserved. Always. Brass plaque installed 5 years ago read, "For those who show up." Nobody sat there except by invitation. Tonight, Sarah opened it for everyone. 30 Hells Angels. Santos Isabella Freeman, who'd stayed friends after the case closed, and Ethan's girlfriend, Maya, who'd learned that dating someone raised by bikers meant understanding loyalty came before convenience. Wolf stood to speak. Ritual now. Every Sunday someone shared a story. Tonight was his turn. 15 years ago, my daughter died. Lucy, 7 years old. I couldn't save her. Wasn't enough money, wasn't enough time, wasn't enough anything. I thought my life ended when hers did. Thought I was just waiting to join her. He paused, looking at Ethan. Then a kid I'd never met ran across a parking lot to warn strangers about danger. Could have stayed in his car, could have looked away, could have decided it wasn't his problem. But he didn't. He showed up. Ethan's face flushed. He'd heard this story before but never grew comfortable being its center. Brotherhood means nobody gets left behind. That's not just club motto. That's how we live. That kid showed us brotherhood. And in return, we showed him family. Real family. The kind that doesn't disappear when things get hard. Applause rippled through the diner. Not loud, respectful, acknowledging. After dinner, Sarah found Ethan at the counter making hot chocolate. Mama D's recipe. Cinnamon honey whole milk, the kind that tasted like safety. You make it just right now. Learn from the best. He handed her a cup. They stood together watching Hell's Angels laugh and argue and exist in the way families do, messy, loud, imperfect, present. Do you ever regret it that day at the gas station? Ethan's question came out serious. Sarah considered it honestly. I regret Wolf getting shot. I regret the terror. I regret you having to grow up so fast. But do I regret you speaking up? Never. You saved lives. You showed me that courage matters more than safety. Dad would be proud. Dad would be amazed. They drank hot chocolate in comfortable silence. Outside, Portland settled into October evening, 10 years removed from the night everything changed. Inside, family gathered not bound by blood, but by choice, by showing up, by refusing to abandon each other when abandonment was easiest. Jackson found Sarah as the diner closed, helped her count register, clean tables, lock doors. Routine built over 10 years of marriage that still surprised her with its stability. Wolf's moving slower. Did you notice I noticed? He's 68. Bullets and age catch everyone eventually. Jackson's concern showed in the way he watched Wolf limp to his motorcycle. The old man could still ride, still showed up, but mortality was winning the long game it always won. We should do something. Memorial fund, scholarship, something with Lucy's name. Already working on it. Lucy Rose Stone Memorial Scholarship for children who've lost parents to insufficient health care. Ethan helped design it. Of course he did. They drove home in Jackson's truck, same one he'd driven before prison, before his family died, before Hell's Angels gave him reason to keep breathing. Sarah's hand found his on the gear shift. Scarred hands touching scarred hands. Proof that broken people could rebuild. Ethan was already home studying for finals. College in 8 months. Pre-med at Oregon. Oncology specialization planned. Lucy's legacy living through him whether he fully recognized it or not. Sarah stood in the doorway of his room, watching him work. 17, nearly grown, still humming Unchained melody when he concentrated, still carrying his father's music and Wolf's courage and her own stubborn refusal to quit. Love you, Mom. He hadn't looked up, just knew she was there. Observant like always. Love you too, baby. She retreated to her bedroom, found Jackson already in bed reading. Simple domestic scene that once felt impossible. Poverty still touched them, managing a diner paid bills but didn't build wealth. But poverty without terror was manageable. Poverty with family was survivable. Her phone buzzed. Text from Santos. Derek Kane's brother just got released from prison. Thought you should know. Probably nothing. But keep eyes open. Sarah showed Jackson. He nodded, made a call. Within minutes, Hell's Angels knew. protection activated. Not panic, just readiness. The kind that said, we've done this before, we can do it again. But Kane's brother never came. Turned out prison had taught him that vengeance cost more than it paid. He left Oregon, started over in Nevada, disappeared into the kind of anonymity that saved lives. 5 years after that night, 15 years after the parking lot, Sarah stood at Lucy's grave. Mount Calvary Cemetery. Small headstone that read, Lucy Rose Stone, 2001, 2009. Beloved daughter, forever 7. She brought flowers, daisies, Lucy's favorite according to Wolf. Your dad's doing well, still riding, still showing up. He saved my son. I wanted you to know that. Wanted you to know your dad's a hero. Not because he killed anyone, because he protected people who needed protecting. The wind carried her words away. Maybe to nothing. Maybe to somewhere Lucy could hear. Sarah chose to believe the latter. Wolf found her there an hour later. He didn't ask why, just stood beside her looking at his daughter's grave. She would have liked Ethan, would have asked him 10,000 questions and driven him crazy. He likes her anyway, talks about her sometimes, like they're connected somehow. Maybe they are. Maybe that's how it works. The dead don't leave. They just wait for the living to catch up. The prophecy coming full circle. The past doesn't die. It waits. At 70, Wolf retired completely, hung up his colors, passed the sergeant-at-arms position to Tommy, spent his days at Mama D's drinking coffee, telling stories to anyone who'd listen. Sometimes Ethan brought medical school friends. Let them meet the man who'd shaped his understanding of courage. At 73, Wolf died in his sleep. Peaceful, no pain, just stopped breathing one December night with snow falling outside and Portland wrapped in white silence. The funeral drew 500 people. Hell's Angels from 4 states. Police officers Santos had trained. Nurses from Providence Hospital who treated him after the shooting. Regular people from Southeast Portland who'd watched him patrol their neighborhood, keep them safe, show up when showing up mattered. Ethan delivered the eulogy, 22 years old, medical school, already accepted into oncology residency. He wore the red bandana around his wrist and spoke without notes. Wolf taught me that brave means doing what needs doing, even when you're scared. That family isn't blood, but presence. That showing up is 90% of everything. He showed up for me when I was 7 and terrified. He showed up for my mom when she had nothing. He showed up for 15 years after he should have died because Lucy told him he had more work to do. His voice broke. Recovered. The work's done now. You can rest. We've got it from here. They buried him beside Lucy. Same cemetery, same section. Father and daughter reunited after 15 years apart. Sarah placed a single red bandana on the casket before it lowered. Wolf's bandana. The one he'd worn every day since Lucy died. The one that had become Ethan's. Now Lucy's again. Circle complete. At 25, Ethan opened his own practice. Pediatric oncology. Tiny office in Southeast Portland, near where the bus station used to be. He treated kids whose insurance denied coverage. Worked with Hell's Angels charity to raise funds for experimental treatments. Saved 3 children in his first year. Lost 2. The ratio hurt. But he kept showing up. At 32, Sarah retired from Mama D's. Passed it to younger hands but stayed involved. The coffee still smelled like safety. The regulars still knew her name. And every Sunday Table 9 held 30 angels who'd become family when family was just a word. Jackson rode until 75. Then his back gave out, old injuries from Iraq and prison catching up. He transitioned to mechanic work exclusively, fixed bikes for club members at cost, taught young riders how respect for the machine meant respect for yourself. Still showed up, always showed up. At 45, Ethan Hayes, MD, stood before Oregon legislature, proposed law mandatory insurance coverage for pediatric cancer treatment. No denials, no experimental exceptions, full coverage or companies couldn't operate in Oregon. The bill passed. Close vote. But passed. They named it Lucy's Law. Wolf would have cried. Lucy would have asked 10,000 questions about how laws worked and why it took so long, and couldn't they do it faster? But it passed, and children who would have died now lived. Legacy in legislative ink. Sarah at 62 watched the signing ceremony on television. Jackson beside her, 82, now moving slower but present. Still present. Always present. We did that. Our family. Jackson's voice came out proud. No, Ethan did that. We just showed up. That's all anyone can do. Show up. Do the work. Don't quit. The words Wolf had lived by, that Lucy had inspired, that Ethan had carried forward. Simple truth that survived decades. At 68, Sarah Hayes Rivers died peacefully in her sleep. Same way Wolf had. No pain. Just stopped. Jackson found her in the morning, called Ethan, and together they mourned the woman who'd saved lives by refusing to look away when looking away was safer. The funeral filled the same cemetery where Wolf and Lucy rested. 3 generations of Hell's Angels attended. Santos 90 now gave a speech about courage coming in scrubs and exhaustion. Isabella Russo 79 spoke about forgiveness and redemption. Ethan stood at his mother's grave, 47 years old, successful doctor, saved husband, father of 3 daughters, who bore names honoring the family that had formed in parking lots, in safe houses, and Sunday dinners. Lucy Rose Hayes, age 12, smart and curious like the girl she was named for. Sarah Marie Hayes, age 9, compassionate like the grandmother who'd raised her father. Michelle Ann Hayes, age 6, brave like everyone who'd come before. They stood beside him, his daughters, and learned what family meant. Not blood, presence, showing up. The lesson that had saved their father 40 years ago, now shaping their futures. At 93, Jackson Rivers died. Last of the original brotherhood that had rescued a nurse and her son in an October that felt like yesterday and lifetime ago. He'd outlived most of his generation, outlived his guilt, found peace in the years after Emma's death by protecting other people's children. His funeral drew thousands. Hell's Angels from every state. The organization had changed, more diverse, more legitimate, more accepted, but the core remained. Brotherhood, protection, showing up. Ethan spoke at this funeral too. 62 years old. Retired from medicine but teaching at OHSU, training the next generation of oncologists, ensuring Lucy's law stayed enforced. Jackson taught me that redemption is possible, that your worst day doesn't define you, that showing up after you've failed is harder and more important than never failing at all. He showed up for my mother. He showed up for me. He showed up for 55 years after he had every reason to quit. That's the legacy, not perfection. Presence. They buried Jackson beside Sarah. Family plots together, the living visiting the dead living on in memory and law, and children named for courage. At 85, Ethan Hayes returned to Miller's gas station. It was a Starbucks now. Gentrification had won eventually. But he stood where he'd stood at 7, pointed to where the motorcycles had been, remembered the man in the hoodie cutting brake lines. Remembered running, remembered terror, remembered Wolf kneeling to meet his eyes, remembered everything that followed. His granddaughter Lucy Rose Hayes Jr., age 7, stood beside him. You saved people here, Grandpa. I spoke up. That's all. Just said what I saw. That's brave. That's necessary. When you see wrong, you speak up. Even when you're scared, especially when you're scared. The red bandana rode his wrist still, fabric barely held together after 78 years. Lucy's bandana, Wolf's bandana, his bandana. Soon it would be Lucy Jr.'s. Legacy in thread and memory and legislation, and children who lived because one 7-year-old boy decided showing up mattered more than safety. The story didn't end. Stories never do. They ripple outward, touching lives that touch other lives, changing trajectories in ways measurable and mysterious. But if stories must conclude somewhere, let it be here in a Starbucks parking lot where motorcycles once sat, where danger once loomed, where a child's courage sparked something larger than any individual. Let it be in Lucy's law-saving children, 40 years after Lucy died. Let it be in Hell's Angels Portland, chapter still writing, still protecting, still showing up. Let it be in the red bandana passed from generation to generation, fraying but present. Let it be in the understanding that family isn't blood. It's who shows up. It's who stays. It's who refuses to abandon you when abandonment is easiest. Some debts can only be paid in blood. Wolf paid his, but some debts get paid in presence, in showing up, in refusing to quit. And that debt, the one Sarah and Ethan owed to brotherhood, the one brotherhood owed to courage, the one courage owed to legacy, that debt got paid every single day for 80 years. paid in full, with interest.